When Lalaine was younger, she was interviewed on the Disney Channel, and she talked about how she loves to read to her nieces and nephews, and she was so enthusiastic about it, and she came across being so cute and sweet and everything. And, you know, once again, you can really tell Lalaine she loves her family and she loves children as well. And, you know, also you get the impression that Lalaine is a very well-read girl and, you know, very intelligent and you know, loves to read books. And if by any chance you're listening, Lalaine, I've got my 5 top books I'm going to suggest to you later that you might like to read. But first I'm going to talk about some books that I like to read. The first one here is Connections by James Burke. This is a very good book. It talks about how different events throughout history in different parts of the world are all connected in a continuous web. And I kind of take the same approach in my studies on history, but I try to see how all the different cultures in the world are connected to all the other cultures. If you study any one person's heritage, you find out that their heritage is intertwined with everybody else's heritage at some level. I mean, all cultures in history are interconnected with all other cultures in history. It's like no man is an island. It's the same with any individual culture. You know, no culture is an island by itself. All cultures are interrelated and connected to all others. And Lalaine, you probably kind of noticed a similar thing when you were doing your series Flip Side. Especially in that episode where that guy talked about how Manila was originally an Islamic city. And I'm sure you've come to the realization by doing that show that any given person's heritage, especially Filipino, but anybody's heritage, is intertwined with everyone else's. And, you know, it's like when I commented on a previous YouTube video about a pre-classical Taoist philosophy before it was corrupted by Hindu and Buddhist concepts, which, by the term corrupted, I mean that the Hindus and Buddhists corrupted the original form of the Taoist philosophies, not that Hindus and Buddhists are corrupt people in comparison to Taoists, you know. But anyways, you get these early Taoist concepts. They at the exact same time in history, the many pre-Socratic philosophers among the Ionians near Greece had very similar concepts, especially a man named Heraclitus. And you get Heraclitus' definition of the term logos. And is very similar to the Tao Te Ching's definition of the term the Tao. And you get very many parallels, and like the evolution of the dualities, which you also get parallels with that found in the Hindu concept of Maya. And it makes you think that there has to be some kind of historical connection between Heraclitus and Lao Tzu in ancient China. And I believe that historical connection is the ancient civilization of Persia. And, you know, I try to apply networking theory and, you know, kind of like 6 degrees of separation, like the old Kevin Bacon game, which I've heard they have a version for Lalaine now. They have 6 degrees of separation from Lalaine, you know, which I think is totally cool. But anyways, I try to apply that to my studies in history. And in my personal opinion, I mean, Persia is like one of the main gateways of different connections for different aspects of history. Especially in regard to ancient Eastern philosophy and ancient Greek philosophy. It's kind of where the two converge. And anybody who has an interest in that area, I would suggest this book right here, The Persian Empire. It's by a woman named Lindsay Allen. Very good book. I suggest anybody who reads this who has an interest in history. And the next book I'm going to suggest is called Evolving Brains by a man named John Morgan Ellman. This is a very good book. I've commented about it on an earlier YouTube video. Part of the reason I like it is because I like anything on evolutionary biology and also neurology. But also, it's one of the few books who comments about an individual largely forgotten in history. It's a man named Alfred Wallace. And you see, he's the one who co-authored the Origin of Species with Darwin. But they couldn't have been more different. You see, Alfred Wallace traveled throughout the islands of Southeast Asia, mainly studying fauna. He came up with the science of biogeography. He was one of the first naturalists. But anyways, when he studied the different tribal cultures on different islands, he wrote about how he respected their culture and how beautiful their culture was. Darwin, when he studied different tribal cultures, he wrote about how degraded they were and how they were a little more than animals, was how he put it. You know, I mean, all you have to do is read Darwin's book, The Sin of Man. He was obviously very culturally intolerant, very much a racist. Even Teddy Roosevelt, President Teddy Roosevelt, which I don't really agree with him. He's not the greatest. None of the progressives I'm exactly crazy about. But you do have to give the guy credit that he was well educated on that stuff. And he commented that Darwin he saw as being a fraud with questionable education. And most of the ideas that was credited to Darwin actually come from Alfred Wallace. I mean, he was without question the smarter of the two. And you know, Lalaine, Alfred Wallace once had a orangutan, and he wrote about how the gulf between human intelligence and ape intelligence could not be explained by evolution alone. But anyways, this pet orangutan he seemed to really adore it and really be fascinated by it. And Lalaine, I think you could probably sympathize with that, because I remember when you were younger, you commented about how you love little chimpanzees, and now they're just like little babies and love to cuddle and everything. I thought that was so sweet and cute, and you're such a doll. But anyways, Lalaine, this next book I'm going to talk about, and I kind of hate to bring up the past, but when you first got on crystal meth and came out that you were on it, everybody was so harsh on you and so critical and so sensationalistic. And I think the reason why is because people had so much respect for you, it really took them by surprise. And Lalaine, I think everything happens for a reason. And even though you weren't on it very long, I think it gives you a unique perspective to be able to encourage other young people out there to stay away from this stuff. Because there's a lot of people in Hollywood, for example, have come out, and besides you, has been involved in it, and even in sports. Just like recently, the tennis player Andrew Agassi came out that he admitted that he had a heavy crystal meth addiction. And Lalaine, this book, I can't say I agree with all this woman's views. She seems to have some kind of backwards prejudice views in certain respects. But I think it's still a useful book that you can browse through and get some useful information out of. It's called Crystal Meth, They Call It Eyes. And she is kind of a pessimist and everything, so it's by Mary F. Hawley. So I would kind of take the book with a grain of salt. But and she's definitely not what you call a pro-sex feminist. It's like I commented on a previous YouTube video about that book, What the Bible Really Says About Sex. I have to say, in most respects, that Tom Gruber, I think he goes too far. I'm more sexually liberal in my theological views than average, but in most ways I think he goes too far. In some ways I agree with him. Like, I strongly agree with him that there's sex in heaven. That's a theological issue I've studied. The idea that there's no sex in heaven goes back to a nutcase named St. Augustus, who thought that the root of all evil was sex, I strongly believe there's sex in heaven, and just like everything else, it will be by far better in heaven than it will be here on earth. But one thing I think I'm even more liberal than Gruber on is I'm much more of a pro-sex feminist than he is. I mean, he seems to have a very male-centered sexual hedonism, and in my personal opinion, throughout history, women and female sexuality has been way too repressed compared to that of men. But anyways, these next 5 books I'm going to comment about, Lalaine, I really suggest you read them. I think you'll really enjoy them. The first is one of my favorite books of the Bible, the Book of Psalms, and this is A Shepherd's Look at Psalm 23 by Philip Keller. Really good book, really suggest it. And the next book I'd like to suggest is Alfred Russel Wallace's Theory of Intelligent Evolution. Wallace seems like a pretty cool guy. I agree with a lot of his views, not everything, but really cool guy, and I really suggest this book. And Lalaine, if you're into health, which I hope you are, this health book right here is really good. It's The Magnesium Miracle by Caroline Dean. She's the same one that co-authored the book IBS for Dummies. And this book right here, which I really like, I got it at the Whole Wheatery, it's Brain Building Nutrition, The Healing Power of Fats and Oils. Exceptionally good book. And Lalaine, of course, I'd like to comment once again about this Flickering Pixels. This is a good book. It's by a Mennonite preacher, and I respect many of the Mennonite views. They're one of the few who can directly trace their heritage back to the Anabaptists, which the basic beliefs of the Anabaptists go back a very long time, even before the Catholic Church. But I see one area in which, on average, the Anabaptists were different as the Mennonites were. Generally speaking, they were somewhat more sexually liberal in their theological views than the Mennonites were. But it did kind of vary from one group to another because there's different groups of them, But one reason, Lalaine, I really suggest this book is this guy talks a lot about, Hollywood and the media and everything. And one of the things he talks about is how most people in Hollywood, they're famous because they're famous. They haven't really done anything to deserve their fame. But Lalaine, you did the show Flip Side. I mean, that was a really significant, good show. It talked about your heritage. It talked about history, Filipino history, which is fascinating. Individuals like Jose Rizal and stuff. And Lalaine, you've done so many good things in your life. You've been a good influence on people, a good influence on me. And you've done a lot of charity work without trying to get fame for it. You get somebody like Oprah or something, they might do a lot of charity work, but they always make sure there's cameras there, And Lalaine, I just have so much respect for you. I think you're a decent, beautiful, wonderful human being, beautiful on the inside and beautiful on the outside. I absolutely love and adore you, and God bless you, beautiful, sweet, lovely Lalaine. Bye-bye.